What is up, guys? Alright, so I have another vid I'm making quickly because I wanted to talk about this discussion. So, what I was trying to say about with the top 32 was that as I was looking through it, I kind of noticed something that a lot of other people noticed too. There was a very low amount of diversity in this, in this, like, in this, whatchamacallit, in this field. Now, all of the decks that ended up topping, with the exception of one, were arguably meta decks in that they were like tier 1 or tier 1.5 or tier 2 decks. The decks that had the most representation, though, were the big three: Dino Rabbit, Dino Rabbit, Chaos Dragons, and Inzektor's. Now, what was interesting to me about that was the fact that, what was interesting was just that, yeah, it's a big three, and yet they took the most amount of spots. That was a little fascinating to me. But what I found more interesting was every single other deck that made it into the top 32 was a deck that was not where the person playing it was, where the person who made, where that deck was only, like, this person was the only person to make the top 32 with this deck. The example, first, you had there was one wind-up deck, one, one Dark World, and one Final Countdown, I believe it was, because I believe it was 16, and then, it was just like, it was Final Countdown, Dark World, wind-ups, and then Chainburn, excuse me. Those were like the four decks, and then basically everything else was big three. Literally, like, everything else, from what I can tell, was the big three. Though I do applaud the fact that Dark World was piloted by Merlin Schumacher, who was one of the few people from Germany who came up for the YCS, and who's also one of the more well-known players in Europe. So I applaud that at least, someone who is arguably one of the, like, who could play whatever, decide to play Dark World and decide to play something different. So I like that a lot. What else? Like, Final Countdown was just weird, but this kind of brings me to the point, though. Like, this is a question that was brought up on Mega Capital G's channel. Is innovation, like, not working for this format? I want to talk about something briefly. Now, I don't want to say, like, it's not just a matter of innovation, but also kind of the ability to choose kind of what deck you want, and to kind of take things from a different angle. I want to use last year's Nationals as an example, although I was annoyed by the situation. Although most of the meta appeared to be plants, that was what I was told. I could be completely wrong about this. Although most of the meta was plants, there were a ton of different decks seeing play. But, like, when I say a ton, I just mean, like, there were a lot of different decks where there was a fair representation of each deck. You had Agents, you had Six Sams, you had Tech Genius, you had Heroes, you had X-Sabers, you had a lot of different decks. But with this meta, at least with what this Nationals meta is looking like, I'm not as excited for it, because I wonder how many different rogue decks am I actually going to run into, and whereas, like, how many meta decks am I actually going to run into. Now, when I went to Nationals last year and I competed in the LCQs, and when I competed in the regional flight thing, I ended up playing pretty much almost entire, I think with the exception of 3 matches out of all the ones that I played were the only matches where I didn't play against a Tengu Plant deck, which was pretty crazy to me. And I honestly wondered how many like non-meta decks would I have faced, or how many non-plant decks would I have faced had I actually been in the event. Probably a fair amount, but you get the idea. I still probably would have encountered at least a few. But with talking about innovation, it's kind of like, can we, or rogue decks for that matter, is this a type of format where you can kind of get away with using a rogue deck? You know, given what's being run currently. And it seems like with all the meta decks and how just overpowered they are for whatever reason, like those decks, it's because of that those decks, you know, they can't be played. I mean, I was originally going to play Lightray Sworn. I was so confident in that deck. And now it's just like after doing more testing and realizing that there are just some decks that are just better. I mean, Chaos Dragons basically runs very identical to the deck. And it's just better because even though it has, Lightray Sworn has certain advantages over the deck, it has certain advantages, it's still inferior for the most part. So, like, then why would I play Lightray Sworn in that case? Like, I mean, at least when I played Tech Genius Agents over Tour Guide Agents, I was like, I have my reasons. I do think it's better to have these floater monsters that can also be used for synchro plays, as opposed to playing the Tour Guides for potential rank 3 Xyz plays. I just thought, you know, I love the synchros I can go into, but I can also still make good Xyz plays. But, you know, I value the synchros more than the Xyz. It made sense. I could also play duality more effectively, which just bumped up the consistency of the deck. The Tech Genius monsters thinned the deck out a bit more, like just that kind of stuff. But like now, like this is just a different scenario. We have more meta decks. They're just harder to keep up with. It's just very problematic. Like, ugh, like I just feel like I have so little options. And almost every rogue deck I've tried to make, has just not worked out in my favor. So I'm most likely going to end up resorting to playing a meta deck, I hate to say it, for the regional I'm going to in Stratford on Sunday. It's a real shame, but you got to do what's best sometimes. I mean, this more came down to my friends trying to give me advice. They were really trying to help me, and they were like, we don't think you should play this deck, play something else. I didn't want to run a meta deck. I really don't like to normally, but at the same time, this time I'm probably going to give into it, because I'm not going to not play a deck just because it's popular. There really isn't good logic behind that. I mean, the real reason is I'm just worried people are going to be able to side more easily again. Are going to side in more easily against me because of this, like, they know how to side against the deck, and people are probably going to be siding pretty heavily. But I don't think that's really going to stop me that much, because I know how to counter their side cards, for the most part. I think I'm going to be pretty prepared. I'm just in the process of getting some cards that I need for the deck. So I'll talk about it more tomorrow, because I kind of want to save it for a separate video. But my question to you guys is, what do you all think? Do you think that it's possible to be innovative and make a deck that's completely, like, rogue and completely just out of the ordinary, unexpected, and can still do well? I know what you're thinking. Oh, that's always the case, that a deck like that can do well. Sure, that's true. But I'm saying, is it likely? Is it likely that we'll see at Nationals a fair amount of, like, more than usual, is it possible that we'll see just a fair amount of rogue decks making top 64, or better yet, more rogue decks making it till, like, the very end? Like last year, the best example was when Justin Womack made it with Malefics. Otherwise, there really isn't, like, anything else about it, you know? It's just it. So, yeah, I'm pretty much finished talking about this. Just tell me what you guys think. Again, I'll have another video up tomorrow discussing what I will be running, and just kind of why, and hopefully I won't get hate because I'm choosing a meta deck. If I do, you all can suck it. Have a good night, everybody.